Welcome to the second class Q&A. Today I'm going to talk about finding things that you've created or favorited in Scratch, studios, how to record projects using a feature in Scratch, and I'll go into a little bit more about grouping and ungrouping and recoloring sprites in your projects. First thing I want to do is talk about your page when you first log in. Yours will look different. If you have any communications from people, you'll see it up here under messages. I always like to look at the updates and the featured projects. As you scroll down, you'll find more things that might be interesting for you. And then you get down to recently shared projects that you've done and projects by Scratchers you're following. But there's another view you might want to use, and it's under your profile. If you click on the drop down by your username and go to Profile, you'll see whatever information you wrote in your profile, and I try to update this from time to time. You'll also see what you've been doing. You can change your featured project if you want to at any point. Then you can see your shared projects very easily. Your favorited projects show up, and you can go through these quickly. Studios that you're following. These are great places to find things that are exciting or examples that you want to use for your students. Studios that you curate, you can find these here. And I like to use studios when I'm doing a special event, like in 2017 Grantwood AEA Scratch Day. I put some samples that were relevant to what we were doing that day in that studio. And I've done that for other classes. I've got a game sampler studio that I made, past that one there, that and other studios that I've created for other classes. And then you can tell who you're following and who your followers are, and then there's places for people to comment on this page. Remember that if you're going to, if you see a project that you like, you can click on the person's username above the project and follow them. Okay, another view that you might want to use is the My Stuff view. In the My Stuff view, you can see all your projects, or you can click to just show your shared projects. You do have some ways that you can sort these if you want to, by alphabetical, views, loves, remixes. You also can switch to just your unshared projects to see which ones you might be ready to share. You will also see some untitled ones, so if you're just working on things, every so often you'll have a bunch of untitled, and at some point you might want to come in and get rid of untitled just to clean up a little bit. And then you can see My Studios. And these are the studios that you are either curating with someone else or that you have created. And again, you can sort these by owned by me or curated by me. If you ever decide you want to do a new studio, all you have to do is click on the New Studio button. You can upload a picture if you want to, or just leave the picture that's here. Usually what will happen is when you put a project in your studio, then this picture changes to one of your project's pictures. You can give it a title. My sample studio, and then you can add projects to it. When you click Add Projects, you can find projects that you have done under My Shared Projects, or you can find your favorites or your recent views. And all you have to do is click on a project to add it into your studio, and you can click and add as many as you want. And you can always go back in and take out if you've got one in that you didn't want to get in there. And then I'm just going to go back to My Stuff. And lastly, the trash here. If you inadvertently get rid of something, you have the option to go into the trash and put it back. So navigating around my stuff can be helpful for you, and it can also be helpful for your students. Now I would like to show you the record feature in Scratch, which is kind of handy if you want to make a video of a Scratch project. I'm going to do it with my All About Me, an introduction, which is a short project that once I pick the green flag, it goes automatically. But you don't have to use just projects that go automatically. I'm going to go look inside, and under File, I'm going to go down to Record and Export Video. As you read this, it says capture and download a video of your project to your computer. You can record up to 60 seconds of video. You can include sound from the project or more options. In this one, I'm going to also include sound from the microphone because I'm going to read what it says on the different sound bubbles. This can be a quick way to get some sound into a project for demonstration purposes. I'm not going to pick show the mouse pointer, but if I was working the project, if it had things to click on and I was doing, I might have that. This says record entire editor, may run slowly. I don't want to see all of the editor. I just want to see the project, so I'm not going to check that. And then you have record at highest quality, may run slowly. I'm just going to leave it with the top two options. And it says, please note that the video will not be saved on Scratch. You'll have the opportunity to save it to your computer. Okay, I'm going to click on Start. I have to allow the settings. Hello, I'm Anne. I'm a grandmother and a retired teacher. I like to go camping and hiking in the mountains. Here we are roughing it outdoors with our camper. I also like to crew for a hot air balloon pilot. Here are a couple of hot air balloons getting ready to launch from my front yard. Here is a view of my house from the balloon. I also like to learn about and teach about new technologies. And you can watch down here. I was watching the bar. It took 55 seconds. I clicked on the stop to stop it. The square was the stop. And it says writing video to the file. And then you can click the button to save and download your video when it's finished. You'll notice that a message popped up here about a VLC media player, and you'll need to have that installed, but it's a free download. So it gives it the name Movie. It's going to Scratch Projects. So I'm just going to put today's date in front of it. Save it. I'm going to close this message out. And then I can go get the video and play it. I'm going to go find my Scratch projects. And click on the video. Which is this icon, the 720 movie. It tells me a new version is available and I can download it and update if I want to, but I'm going to say no.
I'm a grandmother and a retired teacher.
outdoors with our camper. I also like to crew for a hot air balloon pilot. Now I'll go ahead and pause that. As you can see, this could be a great tool, especially if you were going to make a video of several projects that students had done that were similar to this. But I just want to remind you, you do need to download the media player. It's free to play these back. In Scratch, when you want things to happen, you usually use an event block. One of the event blocks that's used a lot is when green flag clicked. This can be used for several different scripts in your project. However, when the green flag is clicked, they will all start at the same time. There might be other times when you want to delay a start and you can use a wait block. But there's also a very handy event block that you can use that's called the broadcast. I've got an example of a project using a broadcast, and you can find the broadcast under the events blocks. When you pull out a broadcast block, you want to give it a name. The default is new message, but you can have more than one broadcast, and you want to give them a message that makes sense. Once you have a broadcast, then you can have an event called When I Receive, and you can pick the name of the broadcast. In this script here, the cat is going through a little introduction, and when he gets done, he broadcasts action. You don't see anything that when it's running to show that. But each of the characters then will receive that broadcast and do something a little bit different. So in this case, one time the cat is doing the broadcasting, he sends out the broadcast, and then each of the sprites that is going to do something based on that will receive that broadcast. You can use a lot of different broadcasts in your script, and it's a good way to avoid problems typically with the wait block, because if you use a wait block and then change things in your script, sometimes the timing is off. But the broadcast is a nice way to get around that. I'm going to go back to the project page here and then click on the green flag so you can see how this goes. Today we're going to learn about broadcasting. I'm going to broadcast a message to 3 different sprites. When my sprites receive my broadcast, they will appear and say something. Ready, set, broadcast. And that's my example of broadcast. For more information on it, feel free to check the Scratch Wiki. And you can always get to the Scratch Wiki from almost any page in Scratch just by scrolling down to the bottom of the page, going to Community, and clicking on the Scratch Wiki. Once you do this, you'll see recent news, and you can always search the wiki for excellent information. The last thing I'm going to talk about is some tips and tricks for working with sprites that you upload or get from clip art, and a little review of some making costumes for animation. On this project, I have brought in a picture of a frog that I had saved, and I uploaded it from a file to bring it in. If I want just the frog to be the sprite, there are some tools that I can use to select that. I'm going to go to Costumes, and I'm in the bitmap mode, and in the bitmap mode there's a tool here that looks like a magic wand. It's called the Remove Background. It's a fairly new tool in Scratch. The way it works is you click on the tool and then you draw around the outline of what you want to keep, and the rest will eventually disappear. I sometimes like to boost this up when I do it, but just for a quick demo, I'm going to leave it like it is and do a real quick going around the frog. I would go much slower and take my time and do it in a zoomed mode. But I get over here. When I touch the two edges or two ends of the line, the hourglass goes, and it can take a while depending on what else your computer is doing. But you'll kind of watch in a little bit and you'll see it won't look exactly like it's gone on the editor here, but you'll see in just a little bit that it will get rid of it on the slide itself. So here's how it worked. If I want to, I can go back in and take out some more on it, but I can eventually get to where I have a decent outline of this. It takes a little bit of practice to do it this way. There's another way that you can remove backgrounds, and I want to show you something on a clip art picture that's brought in, because a lot of times when you bring in your clip art, you might have it on a white background, and then if you decide to go in and change your background, here on the stage, I've got the stage backdrop showing here, and I'm just going to pick a green color and the paint bucket and click on the background. You'll notice that there was a white edge around this clip art, and that's quite common in some of the clip arts that you get. So one way to go about that, you could try using that magic wand, remove background tool, but another thing that works fairly well is the eraser tool. So I'm going to click on the eraser tool, and I'm going to click on the owl, and I've got him already zoomed up to 200%, and I can change the size of the eraser. If I want to be a little more fine-tuned, I can make it smaller width. If I want to just quickly get in and get rid of some of that white stuff, I can leave it pretty thick. So I'm going to click and move along. This is where if you had a touch screen and maybe a stylus, it would work a little bit better. And I'm just going to erase that white. And I would have to go into each section of this. And as I let up on my mouse, I can see on the left part of the editor if I've got any little bits left, and I can go in and kind of fine-tune that too. This is where I might make my eraser a little bit bigger and go in and clean up the little specks, and they'll eventually disappear. So that's another way that you can get rid of the background around a clip art, especially if you're going to have it on a colored background or an image background. The next thing and last thing I want to review is working with sprites to maybe recolor them and or make new costumes for them. The first sprite I have here is a bear, and sometimes it's fun with these images that don't have a lot of color to fill them in with a color and perhaps use the gradient fill when you do that. And the gradient fill is an option that shows up once you've picked a color and the paint bucket, and it shows solid, one kind of gradient, another kind, and I kind of like to use the one that kind of looks like a shadow on one side, but you can play around with these, and what it does is it kind of gives your sprite kind of a three-dimensional look. I could also go in and change the eye color, the nose color. I would make it bigger if I was doing this. And if you've got more than one costume, you'll want to go in and do the same thing on each costume. This is important to remember if you're going to make more costumes, and use the regrouping tool and ungrouping tool to do that. So now I've got two costumes for the bear, so it can look like he's waving a hand and putting his hand down. I'm going to make one more costume for him. I'm going to duplicate this one, and I'm going to have one where he has both hands up. First thing I want to do is make sure I've got my select tool, the arrow, and I'm going to select the bear, and then I'm going to go and ungroup him. When you ungroup, sometimes a clip art or a sprite is grouped several different times. So if I click on him, I'm still seeing this grouping here. So I'm going to ungroup again, and then I'm going to click on an arm, and this arm is by itself now. So if I want to move it, I can move it without moving everything else. So I can click it around like this. Oops, I'm kind of growing it. If I want to move it, I go to the middle here. And then I think I probably want to flip it. I can flip up and down, or I can go back, or I can flip left and right. And let's see, I'm not sure which one looks the best on this guy. This one I think does. And then I'm going to rotate it. And then I'm going to move it back in here. It's not perfect. Let me move it just a little bit more, nudge it a little bit. So now I've got another costume. So if I want to animate him, I can do that. I'm going to select everything and regroup it again. And I could keep going through this process, just changing a minor thing about the bear. So let's go in and just animate that real quick to see the effect. So I've got the bear selected. I'm going to go to scripts. I'm going to go to when this block clicked for my event, and I am going to do a control. We'll have him do it 10 times, and we'll do the next costume block under looks, and we'll add in a control for weight. We'll wait like about 0.25, a quarter of a second. If you don't put the weight block in, the changes will happen so fast that you won't see it. It'll look like the bear's not moving. Okay, let's test this out. So you can see how he's doing it now. He's going from one hand up to two and then back down. Now, I want to point out another sprite that might be a little bit more complicated to change. I'm going to go to costumes. This one has several different costumes for it. So you might, if you're going to change an element in this, you got to be careful. You got to change everything. Change each costume to match. But you could play around with adding costumes too after you change your basic look. So I'm going to be on the select. I'm going to select, and I'm going to ungroup. You usually see those blue lights appear when you ungroup. Now I'm going to click here, and it's showing me what I think is a t-shirt. So I'm going to change the color of that and use the bucket. And I'm on the gradient still, so if I don't want to use a gradient, I can come and change it. And I can change the t-shirt. You notice I could change the jeans at the same time if I wanted to. Let's make them black. And the hair too. When I ungroup, I can do several things at once here. Let's do a different hair color. Oh, that's realistic, isn't it? Now let's say I wanted to move the hand a little bit. Right now when I click on the hand, I'm getting the whole hand bent here. Sometimes you want to go in and keep ungrouping. I'm going to zoom in a little bit on this. Go to ungroup, and now when this is it. This is what I get. So my options are going to be kind of limited here, and you notice too that the color is separate from the outline, the hand outline here. So that's another thing to think about when you're regrouping and ungrouping. Sometimes it takes a while to get down to the element that you want to change. For example, in the facial expressions, let's go back here, ungroup. Let's ungroup. Trying to get to where I can see that I'm just going to affect an eye or a mouth, and it might not show up easily in this one because of the way it's grouped. But in some sprites you can go down, you can keep going down, and you'll get to the point where you will see, there it is. You can get to the mouth, you could stretch it out, you could have it be a closed mouth so you can make it look like the person is talking more realistically. You just have to keep selecting and ungrouping, selecting and ungrouping to get down to the basic components. So these are just some tips and tricks for customizing sprites and or adding costumes to your sprites to improve the animation or to make animation for sprites that don't have costumes. And I will be sending, after you watch this, I'll also send out a link to a studio that has some more samples of projects that use some of these features that you've seen in this Q&A.